So we can call to order the October 12th, 2016 meeting of the Portland Development Commission Board of Commissioners. Call the roll, please.
Chair Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Cruz,
Here.
Commissioner Edlund,
Here.
Commissioner Merlin Capulla, Commissioner Myers.
Here. Okay. Next on the agenda is Commissioner reports. Commissioner Cruz, if you'd like to start over on my right.
Sure. Just a couple of sort of PDC-related meetings. On September 20th, I attended the EcoTrust Roots at the Red event, their 25th anniversary. On October 6th, I met with Drummond Kahn, Director of Audit Services for the City of Portland, and Chair Kelly to follow up on our audit liaison duties. I had some other meetings, but they weren't necessarily related to the PDC.
Thank you. Mr. Edlund?
Sure. So I attended the Oregon Historical Society annual dinner deal, the OHSU and Dornbecker Foundation annual dinner. Attended the Circus Project event last night. Went to the Detroit Best Practices with Kimberly. Also attended the Roots at the Red. Attended the PSU Foundation event, met with North De La Salle High School, and also the Bullitt Foundation, and met with PAIR today. And most humiliating of all, with the Ultimate Sacrifice, spent Saturday afternoon in Eugene.
Me too.
Does that have to be on the record? Commissioner?
Oh, yeah. So I had an opportunity to meet with Kimberly Moreland and Tori Campbell and Kate to talk about the Northeast Portland Initiative and the spending of $32 million over 5 years. They have had wonderful community listening sessions. One was on October 6th, and it was very well received, and lots of great feedback came out of that. They have another one coming up on the 20th of October. If any of you are available to go, and hopefully they'll have a chance to come talk to this body about the work that they are doing. But so far, so good.
Commissioner Myers?
Just in the last month, attended several groundbreakings. We have several more this week that are coming up. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Let's see, I was at the Roots at the Red. I did attend the Northeast Community Development Initiative meeting, and I'm pleased to report that our new executive director and Tori Campbell both acquitted themselves well in their presentations. I was proud of them. Learned some things I didn't know. In fact, that slide that shows the assets of African Americans is something that I think sometime the commission should see. It was informative for me. And really want to acknowledge Kimberly. I thought she did more than I've seen a PDC director ever do in acknowledging to a community some of our faults in a way that was, I think, well done. Attended the PSU Student Development proposal event for the post office. I went out to a new academy out in North Portland to talk to them. They're interested in maybe getting funding from PDC, the Wayfinding Academy. With Commissioner Cruz, I met with Drummond Kahn from the auditor's office, and I think we would both recommend that as something that, to learn from the auditor's office some of the history that has gone on with PDC in the past, I found informative and enlightening. So I think that's maybe something we could even do as when we have new commissioners as part of their orientation.
Yeah,
It was
great.
pretty interesting. Okay. So with that, I will hand it over to our executive director.
Great. Well, good afternoon, Chair Kelly, commissioners. It's been a very busy month, so lots of activities and a couple new staff that I want to recognize as well. I had an opportunity to present to Travel Portland, who was convening to talk about some of the opportunities given the new convention center hotel. So there were local travel and event planners and had a chance to talk to them about what's going on in the central city here. Also attended the EcoTrust Roots at the Red event and got to see with a very cool virtual reality what it will look like when they redo that space. Great attendance there and recognition of the connection between rural and the city of Portland. Attended the NAIOP breakfast event, got to participate on that panel. There were a series of PSU students who did an excellent job of imagining what the post office site could be and using that as a learning opportunity. So that was a great event. Attended the annual Latino Networks Noche Bella event as well. Went to speak to the Columbia Corridor Association with the head of Business Oregon, Chris Harder. Also enjoyed the Detroit Best Practices trip, particularly learning about some of the small business work that they've done, the Motor City Match, really pairing small businesses and some open spaces, so things to learn from that. They have had an amazing level of investment in the central city and continue to have really vibrant neighborhoods, but then also a number of neighborhoods where there's just very little density and you see, considerable challenges. Attended the North-Northeast Community Development Initiative. The slide that Chair Kelly referred to showed the wealth disparity between white families, white households, African-American households, and Latino households nationally, where you have, on average, the median household income or household assets for white Americans is about $140,000. The median assets for African-American families in the United States is around $11,000, and the median assets for Latino families is approximately $13,000. So it's really a staggering disparity that dwarfs in income inequalities. And so the focus of the North-Northeast Plan on generating wealth was something that really seemed like the most important part of the plan to the community members who came in and participated. Do encourage people to come to the event on October 20th, and there's more information on our website for people who want to learn more. I attended the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce event last week, and I want to recognize some great work that was profiled by KGW and Channel 8. So they had on the R42nd Avenue, which is one of the NPIs, and they did, with the executive director, Michael DeMarco, acquired a property in the Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative District using the Community Opportunity Fund, and Dana Decline was interviewed, and so we have that on our website as well, but it's really a great community-led, community-driven, public benefit-oriented approach, so we're excited about that. Coming up, we have the Asian Health and Service Center Annual Conference Dinner on the 14th. I think that there will be a big focus on the new project in Lentz Town Center. I'll be speaking at the North by Northeast Community Health Center ribbon cutting, which is happening on the 21st. Want to invite everyone to the groundbreaking on the 23rd at Lentz, in Lentz as well. More information about the 9101 project on our website. And that is on 92nd and Foster. So our team, Sean and folks, are busy working on that and will be tied to the Lentz Farmers Market. So that's something that we encourage folks to come to. And then finally, I will be attending, along with other commissioners, the PBA Leadership Evening on November 1st. It's a great event. It's always very informative. And this year, they will be recognizing former PDC Commissioner Charles Wilhoit, who is receiving the William S. Nato Outstanding Service Award. So we'll be going to that. So finally, want to recognize two new PDC employees. Cyrilda Summers McGee has joined us as the new Director of Human Resources and Workforce Development. Before coming to PDC, she was the HR Director at the Oregon Department of Education. Prior to that, she managed diverse talent pipeline for Kaiser Permanente, where she created one of the most diverse hospitals, or the most diverse hospital in Oregon at every level, so C-level, through nurses, and continues to be a very diverse hospital in Oregon. Before that, she was the Executive Director of Partners in Diversity and Director of PBA's Leadership Portland. Before that, she was the Assistant Dean at Reed College. For the last 3 years, she's been a member of the Neighborhood Economic Development Leadership Group, so she's really provided us with extraordinarily beneficial advice and has informed a lot of the programs that we've been working on. Serilda has an MBA from Willamette University, a master's in education from Ball State University, and a bachelor's in science from Grand Valley State University. She's a native of Michigan, but now calls Portland home and has for a while. And she recently published a book that you can buy on Amazon called Change the Work Game, Building and Sustaining a Diverse Workforce. So I encourage you to check that out. So we are very excited to have Serilda here. And Jillian Detweiler, who is the new interim development manager, who comes from the mayor's office. She's been a policy advisor in Mayor Charlie Hale's office for the last 2.5 years, and has been influential also in shaping a lot of the work that we've done, helping guide our work in Lentz and across our urban renewal areas. Been a really trusted advisor, so we are thrilled to have her in this new role. Before that, she was at TriMet for 13 years, where she went from senior planner to property development manager and then eventually director of real estate. She worked on the Orange Line and acquired 200 and some properties through that process. So very experienced in acquisition and public-private partnerships. Before that, she was liaison for planning and permits with Commissioner Charlie Hales for almost 8 years. And before that, she was a nonprofit housing developer and a community activist. So lots of experience, and we're really happy to have her. She has a master's in city and regional planning from UNC, bachelor's from Lewis and Clark, and she plays soccer for Portland Straight Shooters. So delighted to have Jillian. So that's my report.
Thank you. Welcome to both of you. Jillian, I didn't know you were a straight shooter. Seriously, welcome to both of you. Moving on, we have approval of the minutes. And as you can see, we have a lot of minutes. And it's in fact, if there's no objection, we can vote for them all at once. So unless we have corrections to the minutes,
Saw none, so I would move to accept.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the minutes, approving the minutes for June 8th, June 21st, August 8th, August 17th, and September 14th, and yes, I did read them all, signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it, motion carries. We have one individual here today for public comment, David Gweither. David, would you like to come up? David has been before us before talking about the 10th and Yam Hill parking garage. I think he wants to talk to us about seismic issues today, is that right?
That's correct. Hi, my name's David Gweither. I'm a lobbyist for Peterson's Convenience Stores, who've been a tenant in that building for over 32 years. I provided some handouts that'll be informative. We're trying to interact with PBOT and the Portland Development Commission regarding this property, since we're going to be evicted. And if we're going to be evicted, we might as well do this right the first time. The problem with the property is that when they built it, and you can see on page 10, they built the pillars. I think I described this before, but I have pictures this time. They built the pillars, then they dropped the beams in, and they didn't attach them to the pillars, so they're balanced. And these little corbels that in 1978 or 9, whenever they did this, was a very efficient way to build, but given what we know now about seismic issues, things have changed. Now, the architecture firm involved from the beginning, and this project seems to have gone back quite a number of years, even they expressed what they call raised doubts concerning seismic performance. But they came to the conclusion last year that they could get around, or they can comply with city ordinances, since there's not going to be a drastic change in occupancy. Well, since the city ordinances were written quite a while ago, they're going to be updated here shortly, but not for this particular type of project. And also since their opinion came out, there's been a change in the percentage of chances that we'll have a major earthquake that will affect Portland in the next 50 years. And there's 3 parts to my handout. One is the report that we commissioned by a structural engineer who's taught structural engineering and seismic issues at Portland State for over 30 years, probably trained the guys who gave the opinion that this could be okay, can probably get a building permit, et cetera. Anyway, since then, it's gone from the odds of 14 to 17% up to close to 20% in the next 50 years. There's a very large tectonic plate off the coast of Oregon. Juan de Fuca, I think, is the name of it, and it moves roughly every 350 years. Well, it's 317 years since it moved the last time. 1700 was the last time it moved dramatically. Now, obviously, Portland is quite a ways from the coast, but it would affect Portland, and depending on the tide that day and whatnot, we could even have some small amount of activity coming up the Columbia and down the Willamette. So what we're encouraging the Portland Development Commission to do is to take a hard look at this project, because if I'm right, and I don't want to be right, it's going to cost another $5 to $9 million to put, they have a way to solve this problem. They have epoxy plates that they could put in that would attach the beams and the pillars. There, on top of it is, because it was built in 2 stages. First, they built the concrete stage, then they built the steel stage. The steel stage actually kind of holds it together. The problem is there's rust, so they're going to have to fix that rust. But anyway, I've tried to input this into the architecture firm. They're not interested in receiving this unless it comes from PBOT, and I doubt that PBOT's, it's probably hasn't missed their round file since I dropped it off there. But this is a way that we're trying to contribute to the city of Portland, since we're going to be sacrificed in this process, and we might as well get something, or the city might as well get something out of this other than a lack of a convenience store. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So on the consent agenda, item number 6, we have Report 1651, Resolution 7211, modifying the terms of a purchase sale agreement to convey 0.38 acres of real property in the Lentz Town Center renewal area to Leisig Brothers Construction. So that just requires a motion for approval.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Our next item, number 7, is an information item. Update on Home for Everyone. Mark Joland, the initiative director, is here to speak with us, I think. We're probably moving too fast. We may end up having to take a break because we have people timed to come in at 4 for the next item.
Is that the SEO
Yeah. There's Gary Timchuk from. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry to keep you waiting. My name is Mark Jolin. I'm the director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services, and I also serve as the director of the Home for Everyone initiative. I appreciate the opportunity to come and spend a few minutes with you today to talk a little bit about, and I'll keep my part of the presentation relatively brief, just in terms of what the initiative is, what the office is, what the work is that we're doing, and then give you an opportunity to ask me questions.
Mark, just so you know, we have a scheduled 4 o'clock, our next item, and we're running a little fast, so you actually have more time than maybe.
I have more time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad I wasn't actually late to the time I was supposed to be here. So let me just grab my notes. So I'll give you just a couple of words of background, my background. So I'm actually grew up in Portland and started out doing work on homelessness when I was in college in Philly, just literally taking sandwiches out to the street, and then came back here and worked at Transition Projects for a while, which is still our biggest publicly funded shelter provider, getting bigger all the time, and then was at St. Francis Dining Hall as the program manager there for a bit. And then I was in Chicago in law school and came back and worked for the Oregon Law Center. So I was a legal services attorney representing homeless people, largely around things like camping issues and use of public transportation and use of parks. And then I was in the private bar for a bit at Perkins Coie, and then went to become the executive director at Join, which is a street outreach organization that works to help people move back into permanent housing, remain stable there. So I was there for about 8 years before making the transition into the Home for Everyone initiative role. And because it gets confusing, I work for Multnomah County. So my paycheck comes from Multnomah County. And as you'll see, I actually answer to both the elected officials at the county and at the city, and also to a wider board and executive committee of the Home for Everyone initiative. So that is my background. So what I wanted to do is just give you a little bit of the context for a Home for Everyone. So we had a 10-year plan that those of you who've been in Portland for a while probably know about. It launched in 2004. And it was due to expire in 2014. And so prior to the expiration of that 10-year plan, and recognizing that we had not ended homelessness, the community came back together to create a new strategic plan that sought to learn from the things that were working well under the 10-year plan. And there were a lot of strategies that we developed under that plan that do work well, but we just never were able to take them to the scale that we needed them to be at. But then there were also some things that we didn't do so well under the 10-year plan, and we tried to learn from those things. And it's helpful, I think, to know what we identified as some of the limitations. One, that plan was very focused on chronic homelessness. Folks who had been out a very long time, who were struggling with a disability. The theory of change was that if we could house all of the chronically homeless people who were consuming a significant, disproportionate amount of the resource, it would free up some of those resources for other populations that had need. And that's fine, it's true. When we house chronically homeless people, there is a cost savings to the community, and housing that population is more challenging than folks thought, and it's much harder to see those costs come back into the system to serve other people than folks had originally imagined. And so we had a very narrow focus on chronic homelessness, which worked well. We saw a good progress in meeting the needs of our chronically homeless community, but because it was so narrow, and other communities had needs too, the domestic violence community, the homeless families and homeless youth, we didn't stay together around one table. We essentially had one plan, and it was largely within the city because the city was responsible for working with homeless singles. And then the county developed separate systems of care for domestic violence, for youth, for families. So we created this kind of fragmentation that, on the one hand, there are differences between the different populations experiencing homelessness. That's true. And yet there are many things that they have in common, many needs that they have in common, and having a very fragmented system often led to inefficiencies and less effective investment of our scarce resources. So that was one limitation. The other was that there was no recognition in that plan and no focus on racial equity. And one of the well-documented and certainly now much better understood dynamics in the homeless population is just how overrepresented communities of color are within homelessness. And that meant that we really weren't, one, understanding that dynamic from a data and analysis perspective, and we also weren't programming towards trying to address that overrepresentation and that disparity. We also didn't talk about shelter. And that might have been the thing that got the most attention in our community, was that there was the sense that under the 10-year plan and the work that we were doing through 2014, we didn't want shelter or we didn't care about shelter. The reality was that when we started the 10-year plan in 2004, all we had was shelter. All we did was ask our providers to tell us how many bed nights they were providing, how many showers they were providing. We weren't actually asking our providers how many of the people who come into your shelter are moving out of shelter and into permanent housing, and when they get there, how many of them are staying housed. So we weren't building a system that was oriented towards ending homelessness. It was about responding to the emergency that you had people sleeping outside, which was fine. So when we initiated the 10-year plan, there was a focus on how do we move people out of homelessness, out of the shelters, off the streets. How do we keep them in housing in the first place? How do we do a better job on prevention? We didn't talk a lot about shelter. We took it for granted, I think because the people who drafted that plan really did think we could make progress towards ending homelessness. They felt like we didn't need to invest more money in shelter. We know now that we need shelter and that we need to be planful around it. And one of the things that is now in this plan is a dedicated focus to understanding the level of shelter need and planning for that and investing in that need. And then finally, the piece that I think will probably be what sets this effort apart from that 10-year plan process is we lacked a governance structure under the original 10-year plan. There was no one really in charge of overseeing and ensuring that that plan was being implemented and updated and checked for its effectiveness over time. We weren't doing a lot of good data analysis. We weren't doing ongoing evaluation. And there was a committee, and I went to these meetings for 8 years, every month, the Coordinating Committee on Homelessness, but there was no appointed membership. There was no formal authority in that body. So one of the critical things that we did under this plan is create a governance structure, and it's a strong one. So we have an executive committee within A Home for Everyone that is the mayor and the housing commissioner on the city of Portland side, the county chair, and currently Commissioner Bailey on the, on the city side. On the county side, the county chair and Commissioner Bailey. We have a representative from the City Council in Gresham. We have Home Forward's executive director. My Memorial Trust is there. Portland Business Alliance is there. And we have faith community representation as well. That group meets every 2 months. It's unprecedented in our community's efforts to have that kind of leadership around the table focused on this issue in the way that that body does. And it means that we're constantly having communication, progress reports. They're asking us that critical question: how are you doing towards, what are your goals? How are you doing towards the goals? What are the costs associated with this? What's working, what's not? And that conversation makes it possible to be successful here. Without that ongoing accountability and dialogue, we were facing just having another plan that wasn't really moving the community forward. So under that, executive committee is also a coordinating board with appointed membership, and I think I have it sort of illustrated here, that has 30-some members on it. It's unwieldy, but it really is intended to make sure that all voices in the community, all stakeholder voices, are being heard in this process and have a formal role. And then below it, we have a number of, as you might expect, subcommittees that are doing work, both standing committees and ad hoc committees that get formed. So going back briefly to this first slide, the plan at one level is relatively straightforward. This is our collective effort to create a community in which no one is homeless and everyone has a safe and stable place to call home. There are some guiding values here that are really critical to all of the priority setting that we do, and we have to set priorities because there aren't enough resources. So we're focused on those who are most vulnerable. There is a commitment to promoting racial and ethnic justice. We need to hold the programs that we have accountable, and that comes back to that data, the importance of data in all of this work. The community is heavily involved, and we were just actually before council this morning talking about a program that ONI is putting together to increase the capacity of community-based organizations to bring folks with experience of homelessness to the tables that we've created to make sure that their voices are central in the conversations that we're having and the directions that we're taking. And then we're looking at strengthening system capacity and partnerships, and we can talk a bit more about that. And then we've got work happening, and we have business plans essentially in each of those 6 focus areas, so in housing, healthcare, employment, emergency services, access, and system coordination, which are a little more on the wonky side. All of those action plans are available on our website, which is ahomeforeveryone.net. You're welcome to take a look at them. We don't have time to look at those today. So in addition to creating that governance structure, there were, in early conversation, there was a recognition that we needed to figure out how to get the government side of this work rationalized a little bit. And for years and years, some people say decades, there'd been conversations around consolidating the city and county human services functions. We did not do that entirely, but we did, on July 1, launch the Joint Office of Homeless Services. And it takes the general fund resources from the city of Portland that were going to homeless services through the Housing Bureau and consolidates them with those that were being contracted out through the county into this office. So we have a budget of about $43 million this year. Our staff is not huge. Right now it's about 8. We're adding a few staff people to it. But our job is to do the work for both the city of Portland and Multnomah County to get those dollars out to our nonprofit partners, to monitor performance, and the office supports the larger Home for Everyone initiative, that larger partnership that I've been talking about. I think there are questions here about sort of what the difference is now between PHB and this and sort of where responsibilities lie. So the Portland Housing Bureau maintains all planning responsibility for housing development. So while as people who work on homelessness, we are going to be a strong voice for more affordable housing inventory, and especially 0 to 30. The planning function, the budgeting function for all of those things, that's work that PHB continues to do. It's their responsibility. They are also continuing to do homeownership work, and they are doing tenant protection work. So for both on the legal side and on the habitability standards side of things. So our role is to do everything up to and including placement of people into housing. So all of the emergency services, shelter provision, the rent assistance, the street outreach programs, the mental health outreach programs, transitional housing, housing placement, and the support people need who were homeless to stay in the housing they have. And then that's sort of where our responsibility stops. The other piece of this is Department of Human Services at the county. They take off from there in terms of the services and maintain responsibility for all of the anti-poverty work. So the addressing homelessness piece is just one end of that continuum. DCHS continues to do the SUN system and the anti-poverty programs that exist in our community. We obviously have to work extremely closely with them and it's one of the advantages of having this office in the county. So I talked about data and the importance of data and coming at this from a larger system perspective. And one of the pieces of work that has really been the focus for the first year, and it was the first directive that our executive committee gave us, is said, all right, we know you've got these systems, you know what each of these systems do, but tell us the overall need. Who's out there? What's the level of need? Tell us how many people are becoming homeless. Tell us how many people are moving out of homelessness. Tell us what our investments that we're currently making are contributing both to reducing inflow and to helping people move out of homelessness. Because we really want to understand at the system level, why do we have, and for those of you who don't have this number in your heads, 4,000 people a night who are either sleeping outside or in a shelter bed or a transitional housing? Why is that unmet need there? What's the dynamic that's driving it? And if we're serious about bringing that number down significantly, let's say, and this was the proposal they gave us, if we had a 3-year planning horizon, what would we have to do to take that number down by 50%? That was the question they asked us to answer. So we went about digging into the data, and again, coming at it in this way, recognizing that the homeless population is not static. It's not the same people every night. We've got people moving into housing every single day, and you'll see the outcome number later, but we had over 4,600 people who we moved off the streets, out of shelter, back into permanent housing last year. So there are people coming into homelessness, but there are a lot of folks moving out. How many people is it that are coming in? What's our best estimate of how many newly homeless people we have? We know we're doing prevention work. Are we doing enough? And if not, sort of what's the scale of investment that we need to make? So that's what we've got, is essentially a system-level inflow-outflow model. At one level, it's fairly straightforward. And what we found out from our initial data runs, and And it was helpful because we did this just before the 2015 point in time count. And if you're not familiar with this, every 2 years, we do a systematic census of all of the people who are sleeping outside in shelter and in transitional housing to get a one-night count. That's where that 4,000 number comes from. What it looked like to us, even before we did the 2015 point in time count, was that we had about as many people coming into homelessness every year as we were able to move out. And so if we had an unmet need number, there it shows us 3,000 because we weren't counting the transitional housing. The blue line is the unmet need now. So the 4,200, and we were trying to drive that unmet need down by half. What we knew is that we were doing about 3,000 placements a year out of there, and we were doing the prevention work that we were doing. We had that number identified, and that essentially we weren't going to make any progress in terms of driving down the nightly unmet need if we just kept doing exactly what we were doing. And this, without going into all kinds of detail, is what we figured out using the data we would need to do if we wanted to bring the unmet need down, that orange line down, by 50% over a 3-year planning period. We needed to increase placements, and our projection was to 4,350 placements a year from that 3,000 baseline level that we started with. We needed to bring preventions up towards about 10,000 preventions a year. And if we did that and sustained that over time, and we were right about our inflow assumptions, there are a lot of assumptions built into a model like this, we should start to see that unmet need number drop. So with that picture, we also had to then answer, because we are paying attention to shelter, even as we start to bring unmet need down, there are going to be people who have to sleep outside. They don't have housing yet. We're only addressing 50% of the need. So given our current shelter capacity, how much more shelter do we think we're going to need? And that's the difference between that green line there and that gray dashed line at any given point. It's that blue box that we're solving for when we try to figure out how much more shelter we need in the community. So from there, we take that and make that into some very specific goals. And these aren't the city and the county's goals. Remember, these are the Home for Everyone goals. It's not the expectation that the city and the county are achieving all these things. It is how are we as a community to get to these numbers. We won't go into detail here, but our target for this year was to add 650 shelter beds to the system to meet some of the gap that we identified, to bring our placement numbers up to 4,350, to bring our prevention numbers up towards 10,000 by the end of this year. And what you see there are the incremental increases. And because we have equity goals, because we are not just talking about the larger system, but within that we have those priority populations, we also break it out by the specific groups of people who we're going to try to serve. We allocate our resources according to these different strategies of prevention, housing placement, and shelter. And then we're using the best practices that we know from our own community and from around the country are the ways to spend those dollars, right? So we do rapid rehousing and short-term rent assistance for people who just need a short amount of support to get back into stable housing. We focus on getting people who are disabled onto long-term benefits. We help people get back into employment in partnership with some of the work that you all do here with the Economic Opportunity Initiative. We try to get upstream and prevent eviction. The more prevention we can do, the better. It's much better for the families. It's much less expensive when folks can be prevented from becoming homeless in the first place. We have to do permanent supportive housing for folks who are disabled and need not just an affordable rent, but some ongoing support services in place to help them make sure that they keep their housing. And of course, we're using housing first approach. And we hear this question a lot, do we do housing first in our community? Of course. I mean, we don't want anybody out on the street or in a shelter bed any longer than they absolutely have to. So our first priority and preference is to keep someone in the housing that they have. If we can't make that happen, our next priority is to get them into the next place that's permanent, that's theirs, that allows them the stability of permanent housing. Only if neither of those two options are available are we talking about providing shelter to somebody. Unfortunately, for a lot of people in our community, tonight, those other options aren't available. So this is just an example of how these work groups are working. So I talked about the work groups and the business plans in each of those areas of housing and safety off the streets and healthcare and employment. And because I know you all do work in the employment area, I thought I'd focus here. But this is a work group made up of all of these organizations who got around the table and said, all right, we got to be part of the solution to this. How are we going to contribute to those successful placement and prevention numbers? What's it going to take if we want to see fewer families lose their housing, if we want to see more families get in. And these folks spent literally months of meetings around the table coming up with recommendations. Broadly, these are the types of recommendations that they came up with, looking at how to better align work systems and workforce dollars with our housing resources, how to bring housing dollars to the workforce system, and how to bring workforce resources to the housing system, how to do more alignment with bigger systems like TANF, how to do targeted investments around racial equity and employment, and then some immediate income opportunity priorities, think street roots and other ways that people get immediate income, even if it's not as much as we'd like, it at least gives them a start. And what I can tell you is that in this year, we put another $1.2 million towards that set of strategies, many of them leveraging the investments that PDC is making through economic opportunity. So these numbers are brand new, and we exceeded our goals in 15-16 by quite a bit. And we've got new money this year, so we're hopeful that we're going to continue to push beyond the initial goals that we set. But there were 4,600 people who moved off the streets, as I said, more than 9,000 people who we were able to help keep their housing. And in part because we expanded shelter fairly significantly, we had over 6,000 people go through shelter last year, and the year before that it was just over 4,000. There's been a lot of discussion about shelter, so I just wanted to show you this. We did set that goal of 650 additional shelter beds. We're at 562 right now. The city and the county alone put another $5 million into this year's budget to expand shelter capacity, and that's really just for the operations. The county's invested quite a bit more in acquisition as well. The city has too. So we are well on our way. And it's not one big shelter. It's a number of very intentionally designed shelters to serve different needs for different populations. And one of the things we're mindful of in this particular area is that because we weren't planning around shelter, we weren't serving everybody who needed shelter well. So we had a certain kind of shelter that we were funding, but for many of the most chronic folks who are out there, really we didn't have a shelter option for them. And so not only are we creating beds, but we're changing the rules in those shelters so that people can bring their pets and their partners and their possessions inside, and they don't have to be clean and sober when they come in. We offer them those services when they're there. That has opened the doors for people who previously really had no choice but to camp in our community. So we're confident we need more shelter. We're working on winter shelter capacity now, and you're familiar with conversations in the community about shelter, but that's where we are to date. It's almost doubling the total number of publicly funded shelter beds we had created any time prior to 2015. So we're moving faster than we ever had in this area. And so this is just, in terms of our conversation now, the work we do can't happen and certainly can't be successful at the scale it needs to be if we aren't figuring out as a community ways to add inventory, affordable housing inventory, and the support services piece we can do, but we definitely look to the community and to you and to PHB around the inventory side. Employment is critical. The programs that you fund and that we're leveraging are absolutely essential. More and more of the people who we house, we're having to house with short-term rent assistance where they have a few months of assistance, just enough to help them stabilize. They're going to have to pick up their own rent soon, and that means they're going to have work, and they're going to have work that pays well enough that they can actually sustain that unit. Many of the folks we help end their homelessness, they are severely rent burdened. We're not moving most people into 30% units. We're moving people into what they can find, and they're spending 60 or 70 or 80% of their income on rent. And then the last piece is property for shelter, and this has been a big topic of conversation in our community. We are always on the lookout, both for property that we can use short-term and long-term facilities and open space, and so there you are. I talked a little longer than I thought I would, but hopefully it was a helpful orientation.
Commissioners, questions?
Yeah. Thank you for your work. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I just wanted to ask actually a few questions. One, you showed the pie graph of sort of the allocations of shelter versus transitional housing versus permanent housing.
Yep.
And I want to know, does that also represent the funds that are being allocated for shelter, transitional housing, and permanent housing as well? You had a pie. You want to go back?
So that was funded placement, sort of the percentage of, yeah.
And if that doesn't represent it, then
Yeah, so I
kinda
can
wanna
tell
make
you
it-
what we're spending. So, sorry, the animation process.
Yeah, this one.
So this was really just to give you a sense of how we're the overall funding is sort of going up, but it does generally. So we're putting about $15 million a year right now of our budget towards shelter operations. And then combined, the prevention is, the rapid rehousing prevention is the remainder of that. I'm not exactly sure how it breaks down dollar for
Are we
dollar.
talking out of the $43 million total budget you're talking about? Are we
Yeah.
talking additional money? Are we talking the?
No, that's all out of the 43.
Okay,
So that's just how we divide it up. And the challenge is, it's a little challenging because some of the permanent supportive housing dollars that are going towards are still at PHB, and some of the prevention dollars are at DCHS. So the total pie is bigger than 43. It's probably closer to 60.
Got it, but about 15 million is allocated for shelter.
Yeah.
And what about transitional housing?
That, for us, that's in the same box.
Same box,
Yeah.
okay.
And we don't spend a lot of local dollar on transitional housing. Most of that is funded through our federal grants.
Got it. And then in your homelessness numbers, I just want to make sure that sort of the definitions and terms, I have a clear understanding. We talked about folks who are on the street, but do those numbers also include persons who are couch surfing?
No. So one of the challenges, the HUD definition, which is what we work with, doesn't include people who are doubled up. And so when we talk about there being 4,000 people a night, we're really only talking about people who are either outside in shelter or in transitional housing. If you include the folks who are doubled up, our best estimate is there's probably another 12 to 14,000 people on top of that, and that's conservative. We have some ways to get at that data, but not great ways to get at that data. It's why the homeless school numbers are so much higher, because the Department of Education uses that broader definition of anybody who is doubled up or also meets the HUD definition. So that is a limitation. And it's important because, and we talk about it a lot within A Home for Everyone, because from an equity perspective, we know within communities of color in particular, the doubled up experience is more prevalent. And yeah, and one of the nice things about our general fund, HUD dollars are constrained. We can't spend HUD dollars on people who don't meet the HUD definition of homelessness. But our local general fund dollars, we can and we do, in particular in the family system, where we have lots of families of color who are doubled up and are needing safe places to live.
Okay, and then my last question, sorry, but thank you for the report.
Yeah.
The last question was actually with regards to once folks make the transition from transitional housing to permanent housing,
Yep.
what is the length of time that you all support them with rental assistance?
It varies. So
Average.
I really can't answer that on average. I mean, I think the general short-term rent assistance program participation length is less than 3 months that folks are getting support there. So, but it really does, you've got some families who are going to need 8 or 9 months of rent assistance. Obviously, it's a scarce resource, so we really want to encourage families to become self-sufficient as quickly as possible. Often families will start out and have to come back, and that's okay. So we set it up with the providers to be as flexible as they need. And I will say that over the last couple of years, every placement has gotten a lot more expensive for this very reason, that it's costing more to get into units. We're paying double and triple deposits. Once folks are in, the rents are higher, they're struggling more, and so our providers are having to spend more resource keeping the families they housed, have less available to help those families that are still in the shelter.
I'm sorry, for real, this is the last question. Then in terms of the population of folks or the contingent that actually goes to permanent housing, what percentage of those folks have secured employment or some educational plans by the time they hit permanent or some form of permanent housing?
I don't know the answer to that. I can find out for you. I mean, we have that data, but I can get back to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi there. Thanks very much. First of all, I just want to thank you for all your great work. I really admire you for devoting so much of your career to this difficult issue. So thanks for your great work. Just 2 questions. One is, I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit more on specific ways that we might collaborate in some way. I mean, you spoke very generally about potential opportunities, but any further thoughts or more specific suggestions you might have, I'd be interested in that. Okay. And secondly, I wondered if you might give us an update on the T1 project to the extent that you have any new developments there. Thank you.
Well, so I'm relatively new to this, so I want to be careful about making too many concrete suggestions around collaboration, but I know that there are numerous projects where you're partnered with PHB right now around, providing land and doing development. You've got your own developments, and obviously for us, we're very focused on that 0 to 30. Like, how do we get units into the mix in these developments that really are deeply affordable? And just because, even someone who's working full-time minimum wage is going to be in that 0 to 30 category, and certainly someone who's on Social Security or long-term disability is likely to be close to that income level. So for us, that is the biggest challenge. It's that where we, on the ending homelessness side of things, see the greatest need. So that those partnerships that you have going now are great, and the more that the collaboration can happen with PHB, the better. And we then can be there with you on the services side, where if folks can get into a unit and they need that ongoing support to be successful tenants, that's the piece that our nonprofit providers can offer. Then on the employment side, I'm not an expert in this area. I think it's the continued commitment to the kinds of programs you're currently funding. You've got an amazing network of nonprofits that are serving a really diverse group of constituents in the community who have employment needs, continuing to kind of support that EOI program and similar initiatives, and working with us and PHB around how to really connect and align those dollars with our housing dollars, because that's where we see the missed opportunity. We don't want someone going through a job training program, losing their housing halfway through it, and not being able to finish the job training program. That just doesn't make any sense. And so that's the piece where it doesn't cost us money, it just requires that we align better. And then on the property search, it really is the case, and we've done some work around this already, but we are looking for short-term winter shelter facilities. We are looking for longer-term facility-based shelter opportunities. And we're also looking increasingly at open spaces and this idea that we might be able to create some kind of outdoor sheltering communities using sleeping pods and with an organizational infrastructure supporting that. So just as an entity that owns property, it's a conversation that we hope to be able to continue to have.
So shelter over the Washington High School site, where the old high school is.
Yep.
I think there's like a 4 or 5 acre piece of land next door to it the Parks has. And I don't think there's any plans in the near future to turn it into a park. Strikes me as a real obvious example. It's nicely fenced with people sleeping on the outside of the fence.
Yeah, so there's been a fair amount of discussion about Washington High School. It was contemplated that the actual building there for a navigation center. I don't know exactly all of the details, but there were a lot of complexities in the current kind of ownership posture of that building and whatever the sort of connected parks conversations are. So yes, it's a site that is on the radar and certainly has been a subject to some discussion.
Customer are asbestos wind turbines. They start building factories out of mylar material, and think the Denver airport. And I've asked them to follow up on the cost, and to build a roughly 70,000 square foot facility all in was about $11 million.
Wow.
And I'd be glad to give you the name of the person there that did the work on that. They think it's got a long lifespan, and they can put it up in a matter of a few months. And driving by a site like Washington High School, that's 4 acres, we could put a large facility there. What percent of the population do you think is, I'm not sure the right term, but kids that are with no parents?
Unaccompanied youth?
Yeah.
It's relatively small. In our last recount was about 7% of the population. It is a population that grows in the summer often. It varies by year, but we do have a group of people, usually in the sort of 24 and under age group, who come through town. And many of them aren't planning to stay, and they're not necessarily looking for the kinds of ending homelessness services that our system offers. So we have some street outreach programs that engage those folks. Obviously, the police have got some interventions that they use. And we try to make sure they're safe, to the extent there's drug use going on and things like that. We want people to stay safe and healthy as possible. But the local, the folks who are here and stay here, we have a really good homeless youth system, and have some excellent providers that engage more than 1,000 youth a year in helping them transition get through school, get into employment.
Kimberly, what do we invest in job training roughly a year?
We invest about $3 million. Is that, yeah, I'm looking at, and roughly half of that goes into youth programs and roughly half goes into adults. So we do support some of the providers that Mark's talking about.
I recently had the opportunity to meet with a pair of folks and the Circus Project folks, and was very impressed with metrics on the results of those.
I'm sorry, on which project?
PAIR project.
PAIR.
And,
Oh, PAIR. Oh, yeah.
and, Circus Project. real alternative type of thing, but the results they've had with young people sounds like it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your comment about collaboration on the job training, I mean, that's a significant effort. And I
Absolutely.
know we've had some folks come in and
Yeah.
tell some stories that are just absolutely, take your wallet out and your heart and slam it on the table, type of thing.
Yeah.
But I just wonder if there's not ways that we could work together or think about how we could increase our funding around job training and think
Yeah.
about it being more targeted. Not that we aren't already, but it just seems like a place that we could help perhaps.
That'd be great. And we put some more money towards youth employment as well. I mean, it seems like we got to give youth that opportunity, right? So I
Thank you
couldn't
for
agree
your
more.
efforts.
Absolutely.
So I have sort of a more general question for you. It just seems to me that the issues that you're dealing with are the issues, it's the issue of our time. Are we as a region, are we investing at an adequate level, or should it be more? An easy question for you to answer probably, but
It needs to be more.
how much more?
Well, so there are a couple answers to this. I think our community, just like every major city, is going to struggle if our federal partners don't reinvest in housing. So, we absolutely need to do more, and I think we need to be fairly united in an ask that our federal partners do more. In order to really get a handle on this. Then, I think increasingly this is a regional challenge. The housing crisis isn't just a Multnomah County crisis, and so I think there is an opportunity to work more regionally on the social services side of things and on the housing side to really partner with the surrounding counties on their efforts and figure out where we can do more together. So that, I think, is a piece of it. Generally, we haven't yet in Portland seen the kinds of numbers of street homeless increase that Seattle, San Francisco, and others. Seattle saw a 19% increase in street homelessness last year after a double-digit increase before the year before that. We were at about a 4% total increase in 2015. We'll see. I mean, we think that we're making progress, and we also are hearing from our providers, and we see some indicators that we got a lot of people becoming homeless in our community. So we'll do our street count in January and have a better sense of what our numbers really look like right now. But in some respects, we're doing a better job of holding on against the crisis than other communities have been able to do. We also share in common with San Francisco and Seattle the fact that we've got growing economies, lots of people coming in here wanting to live here, and that's creating challenges for the lower income people in our community just in terms of housing market dynamics. You're all very familiar with that. So, we definitely need to do more. We need to do more on the inventory side, and we'll continue to need to do more on the services side. I'd say in particular in some of the areas of mental health and addiction services, that's a particularly large unmet need. Affordable care is helping, and we're starting to see the benefits of that, but that continues to be a big unmet need.
Thank you very much. That was very informative.
All right. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah. Our next agenda item is Report 1652, Resolution 7212, authorizing a commercial property redevelopment loan and special authority grant for Self-Enhancement, Inc. Kate Dean, Jillian Detweiler, and Kimberly Moreland are going to be talking with us.
I think I'm going to be the main person, then if we need support from Jillian or Kimberly or Kay, we're happy to bring them up. So
Great.
you're stuck with me.
It was on my list that all those
Yes,
people
I
were, so,
know. Those-
I just read lists.
Good afternoon, Chair Kelly, Commissioners, Director Branham. My name is Kate Dean, and I am the Manager of Community Economic Development. Happy to be here today to talk to you about this item, which, let me make sure I can know how to, which is a request to you to approve Resolution 7212, which will enable the Director Branham to enter into a loan to finance the acquisition of a property we are calling the Gordley House, and a special authority grant to develop a business plan for a cultural center to be located in this house. So that is the action that we have before us today. The property is located in the Interstate Corridor Urban Renewal Area in North Portland on North Williams Avenue at 4511 North Williams Avenue. This is a picture of the house, which is approximately 1,700 square feet. The lot itself is almost 6,100 square feet, and it's a residentially zoned lot. We've had the property appraised, and the appraisal value was approximately $434,000. The way that this request came to PDC, this started really back in about July 2015. The property owners, the Gordleys, Avell Gordley, former Senator Avell Gordley and her sister, approached PDC about the potential for acquiring their family home for the purpose of utilizing the home as a cultural center for African Americans. Over the course of several months, we discussed this acquisition with them and encouraged them, if this was their desire, to find some partners that could work with them around the development of this center. Subsequently, they have developed a partnership with the Portland African American Leadership Forum, the Oregon Historical Society, and Self-Enhancement, Inc., which is the fiscal sponsor for the Portland African American Leadership Forum. And they will be the one that will be, if you approve this action, they will receive the loan, they will receive the grant, and act essentially as the fiscal sponsor. The Portland African American Leadership Forum will be the entity that really is working on developing a business plan to see whether this property is feasible to be turned into a cultural center. As I mentioned, right now the property is zoned as a residential property. In order for us to, in order for the entities here to turn this home into a cultural center, there will need to be a conditional use permit obtained by the city, and the entities will need to develop a business plan for operating the center. So what will go in the center, how will it be financed, what kinds of improvements might be needed on the building. So after developing the partnership, we entered into a period of negotiation around the property and sort of set out what would need to be done in order for us to enter into an agreement with the property owners. So the terms of the loan, we have come to an agreed upon price of $495,000. That is more than the appraised value. When the appraisal came in, the property owners did bring back to us some comparables that they felt were a better representation of the value of the home. We brought that back to our appraiser. The appraiser decided that he did not want to change the appraisal. But in looking at values, the rising property values in the area, and over the course of our negotiations, we determined that a fair asking price for the property is the $495,000. This loan really functions more as a grant. We are trying, it's as much a grant as a loan. We are trying to help the entities to obtain this property for the benefit of the community, to put a nonprofit, public-serving use on the property. And as such, we negotiated a low interest rate for this loan and favorable terms such as principal and interest being deferred, and the loan does not come due. Every 2 years the loan matures, but as the entities can request an extension of the loan, and we've agreed that as long as the property can be used as an African American cultural center, it still is financially viable and is in operation as such, or if there is another use that is in service of the African American community, that the loan will remain in place. So we're really trying to set this up. We think there's for the public benefit. We feel that this is an important asset in a rapidly developing, very historical community that was home to many African-American families and businesses. With the rapid gentrification and change in this community, there really is a desire and a need to maintain and really make sure that the history of the African-American community is preserved in this corridor. So the grant terms would be that that we've agreed through the course of negotiation that for the period of 2 years that we would pay the maintenance and property holding costs for the property, and that we would support the entities in figuring out whether they can get their conditional use permit and how the business plan would function and the kinds of improvements that would need to be put in place through a $50,000 pre-development grant. I think it's important to know that in the first 2 years, we have a milestone in place in the loan that the entities would obtain that conditional use permit. It's not a zone change, it's rather a permit to use the residential property for an institutional use, so they will need to seek that permission from the city, and they will need to develop a business plan and ensure not only us, but themselves, that this really is a viable, feasible plan. Should it be feasible, there will be another 2-year period in which the entities can put the cultural center into place, do whatever types of improvements and curating of the property that they need to do to become a cultural center. And then after that point, it would be operated as a cultural center. So this, I don't really have any further, this is pretty much the terms of the deal. We do have members of the Portland African American Leadership Forum here to answer questions and to make some remarks to you and other invited guests. I think before maybe asking me any questions, it might be good to hear from them so that they can give their perspective on this important project.
Thank you. If we can have them up, Dr. T. Allen Bethel from PALF, Ethan Johnson from Portland State, Jesse Beeson from PALF, and Mr. Kerry Timchuk from our Historical Society. Do we have enough chairs up here? We might have to bring one up. And I'm not going to put you in any order. I'm going to let you all decide that.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. T. Allen Bethel, co-chair of PALF's Executive Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today about a project that I am truly excited about. Supporting community efforts to preserve and enhance the historical and cultural contributions of Black people is one of the things that has been said in so many words in the Northeast Plan and the URA of the interstate. It's part of what PALF believes as well. The Portland African American Leadership Forum leverages the power of our community's combined resources to advance the vision of a connected, thriving, resilient Black community. We do this through several ways, but one way most outstanding is supporting community efforts to preserve and enhance the historical and cultural contributions of Black people. This opportunity and collaborative project between PDC, SEI, PALF, OHS, and the community helps to create a purpose of the TIF economic development goal of creating a vibrant and culturally relevant spaces as described in Interstate Corridor URA. This also is one way to strengthen the African American community's capacity to support cultural and community assets within this particular URA. I'm very excited about the project and the great potential of a repository for documents, artifacts, and a cultural center for exhibits and kitchen table discussions where we sit around the table and talk about what we can do to help improve our community. And what's good for our community is good for all of our communities across and around the city of Portland. I'm also committed to the project going forth. The next steps that continues to propel this project forward to completion, to opening, and sustainably operation. And on behalf of POLF and all the involved partners, I want to thank you for your support of approving this project and moving forward today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Kelly and members of the Commission. My name is Jesse Beeson. I'm a volunteer with POLF and to date have served as the lead on this project. I want to touch on our next steps should the Commission approve us moving forward. You've heard staff mention, but POLF, along with Oregon Historical Society, will spend no more than 2 years, number one, working with an architect and other development professionals to craft a viable vision for what the property will be. Number two, developing the legal partnership between POLF and OHS that may own the property. And three, developing a business plan for the redevelopment, operations, and programmatic work of the project. We are excited to have faculty from PSU's Black Studies Department, along with other community stakeholders who want to play pivotal roles in helping shape what we hope this project can be. We look forward to the time and the space needed to do this project right, and with the input of so many from the Portland Black community. I do want to recognize and thank PDC staff for being thoughtful and helpful throughout this process. They acted swiftly as public agencies can, when we all realized that the time that POLF and OHS would need to plan for this project versus the ever-escalating market realities would have threatened the loss of yet another Black-owned property along North Williams. They heard us when we said that this property means something to Portland. They heard us when we said that this has been and can continue to be a vibrant and culturally relevant space. And PDC staff heard us when we said we don't have the details yet, but given the time and the engagement of our community, we can build a vision together. I believe that the Commission hears that too, and I thank you for your support today.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, for the record, my name is Kerry Timchek, and I serve as Executive Director of the Oregon Historical Society. Founded in 1898, the mission of OHS is to protect the stories, memories, and artifacts that document the history of our state and our state's residents, and to foster the telling of those stories. We do this work through caring for and making accessible to everyone our vast collection of historical material, through our museum and research library, through our school tours and traveling educational programs, through our online publications, through the Oregon Historical Quarterly, and through many more programs. For the past several months, I have been involved in meetings and conversations with PDC, POLF, and others about support that OHS would be willing to provide to a cultural center commemorating African American heritage and history in Portland. While no final decisions or agreements have been made, the conversations have been productive and rewarding, and I believe that OHS would have much to offer such a center. Examples of possible collaboration include providing expert counsel on the care and archiving of historic records and sponsoring exhibits and public programs that focus on Portland's African American heritage and history. OHS was delighted this past May when Multnomah County voters, by an overwhelming 71 to 29% margin, approved a renewal of the Oregon Historical Society levy. One of the promises made in the original 2010 levy and in the 2016 renewal was that OHS would sponsor exhibits and programs that recognize Multnomah County's diverse population. We have kept that promise in forging a connection with the cultural center envisioned in this proposal before you today. We'll ensure that we continue to do so for many years to come.
Hello, my name is Ethan Johnson. I'm an associate professor in the Black Studies Department at Portland State, and I want to say I'm really glad to be here to speak to the support of what I think is a very needed entity, the Avell Gordley House of Black History and Culture in Portland, Oregon. I've been a professor in the Black Studies Department for 11 years at Portland State University. I study broadly the historical and contemporary experiences and understandings of Black people in mainstream institutions, schools, media, and criminal justice system. This work has given me the opportunity to learn from my students in my courses, both white and non-white, the continuing significance of race and racism in the city of Portland and the state of Oregon. We know that both the city of Oregon has a long history of both exclusion of and disinvestment from communities of Black people and other people of color in this city and state. From the initial exclusion acts that made Black people non-citizens in Oregon up to up to 1926 to the rescission of the 14th Amendment in 1867 and its re-ratification in 1974, to the subsequent sanctioned racial, residential, and educational segregation that marks much of the 20th century, and up to the present, to the powerful forms of police brutality and incarceration that has continued through the beginning of this state to the present, and which has resulted in what I would characterize as the complete gentrification of what was a spatially and culturally defined black space in Portland, namely what I call the Albina Corridor. Abel Gordley, state senator, South African anti-apartheid activist, educator, community activist, and culturally relevant mental health advocate, embodies the resistance to this history. Abel Gordley, along with other leaders and the support of much of the Black community, has helped move the city of Portland and the state of Oregon forward to address these critical issues. She, as a senator, played a central role in moving the state to both acknowledge it legally excluded Black people from the state and had this law removed from the state constitution. She was a key leader in moving Portland, Multnomah County, and Oregon to acknowledge and take responsibility for its support of the South African apartheid system, which resulted in divestment legislation. Abel has consistently tried to help and support the Black and poor people caught up in the racially discriminating police systems in our city and state, and organize against police brutality and the negative impacts of policing upon Black people in Portland. Abel is a representative and symbol of resistance to the powerful forms of racial residential segregation and gentrification in the city of Portland. Segregation and gentrification in the city of Portland. From her attendance at mostly white all-girls schools to her work with the Mojo House and the Black Education Center. Lastly, I would point to her efforts to have the city of Portland and the state of Oregon recognize the need for the development of culturally relevant mental health services, which we see in the Abel Gordley Center for Healing. As we know, the scholarly literature has well established racism makes us sick physically and mentally. For me, supporting the PDC's buying Abel Gordley's family house as a historical and cultural center of Black life in the city and state of Portland, Oregon is a no-brainer. It is high time that the city demonstrate consistently and substantively that it values the contributions of its Black citizens to the political, cultural, and economic development of the city and state. And I can think of no better place to demonstrate that support than the development of the Abel Gordley House of Black Heritage and Culture. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. So, commissioners, do you have questions of these folks?
Yes, thanks very much. Thanks for coming today. This is really informative, and I think this is a great project. Just curious, I know that there's a lot of pieces in motion, and you don't have a lot of the details, obviously, but how do you sort of envision it actually working as a space? I mean, do you expect to have to do a lot of additional improvements to the building to maybe expand it a little bit? I think someone said there was about 1,700 square feet. How will that work in terms of, you probably have record storage, exhibit storage, and other things. Do you just have can you give us a flavor for what you have in mind?
I can tell you that we've talked about really big things and really small things. I think what we don't understand and what we have to put together is, what's needed, what's all the visions that are possible, what's the capital needed to do that, and also what's comfortable for the Gordley family in terms of still maintaining the relevance of the historical nature of the property itself versus what's possible. So I think we have a lot of things to try to bring together, and we've talked about everything from what would it mean to lift up the house a little bit and have more space in the basement. We've talked about what would it mean to actually have connected or new buildings, but also recognizing that might not be feasible. Mm-hmm. So I think we until we bring sort of all the parties that both know what it costs and know what all the legacies we're trying to preserve are, we won't have a lot of answers.
Thank you.
Just two things. I'd be really interested to have a follow-up as that evolves and an update on what direction you are headed, because I think it'd be very informative for me anyway. Two, I understand the property is going to be vacant in the interim. Is that correct? And my concern, Jesse, is generally good things don't happen to vacant properties. And to the extent that you can make something happen there in the interim to secure it in some form or fashion or some kind of use, I would sure encourage you to do so.
Well, and we've had discussions on either side. PDC staff was fairly concerned about the liability related to short-term use of that property because it becomes a lot more difficult, and certainly it's more staff headache. And we also understand and agree that absolutely empty properties have their own source of liability.
Well, I think you got some real creative folks up there at that table, and I bet they can come up with some ideas that'll satisfy staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just, I mean, obviously in this project, PDC starts out as a pretty major investor. I'm just curious, what are the funding sources? I thought I maybe heard the Historical Society might be, but I didn't hear an affirmation of that, no. What other sources of funding would you be looking to?
On the capital side,
Yeah, or for that matter, the operations side, but the capital side, to get the project to the finish line.
yeah, I don't think we know enough about the capital side, and partly why we started out this process thinking that the Gordleys would own the house while we went through all of this feasibility process. That no longer became feasible, and so we are trying to be honest that we still don't know a lot of answers, and what the financing from PDC and letting SEI hold this property gives us that time and space. We don't know what it qualifies for on the capital side. Certainly on the programmatic and operating side, we've had early conversations with OHS on how they might support that programmatically. And POLF itself as an organization is going through its own incorporation process and own financial planning process that's happening simultaneously. And we've already made good progress on that, but there's more work to do around that as well.
OHS's obviously mission is history and not real estate development or operating as somewhat as a junior partner in this, but our expertise would be providing exhibits and providing programming.
Okay, I'm just trying to pin you down a little bit. Well, it's certainly, as somebody who's done business in that area all of my life, I think this is a great project. So I would accept.
Before you do that, I'd like to just make a comment, not a question. I actually think that, the project is timely, right? We know from a national perspective, we've got now the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, with America's recognition that Black Lives Matter and that African American culture and contributions are tremendous. And I do believe that there is value in pursuing a project like this, and I completely support it 100% and want to make sure, I agree that as you move through the process that we get sort of regular progress updates, because it's one thing to sort of start the project and to get the upfront money, and then it's another thing to kind of bring it to fruition and then to see it sustained over time. Because I'm really more interested in the sustainability of it, and that it really holds the value that we intended it to hold initially. So I want to say thank you for your work. Dr. Bethel, it's always good to see you. Carrie, Professor. So thank you for the time today, and I do look forward to what will come about. But it is timely. I think it will serve a great purpose, and I also want us to be very intentional in how we secure those supports for sustainability.
The chair would accept a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next agenda item is Report 1653, Resolution 7213. Action item authorizing the execution of a lease amendment with Spartech Industries for the Portland Development Commission property located at 2221 North Argyle Street within the Interstate Corridor Urban Renewal Area.
Good afternoon, Chair Kelly, Commissioners, and Executive Director Branham. My name is Sue Lewis. I'm a project manager, and I'm here with Steve Blank to present an amendment to the lease agreement with Spartec. I will provide some background information, and then I'll hand it over to Steve, who will talk about a little bit more details. The project site is within the urban renewal boundary here, specifically in the heart of the Kenton neighborhood. We'll go into a little bit further here. We're on Argyle and Interstate. In 2011, PDC had the opportunity to purchase 4 parcels adjacent to TriMet's 2.2 acre site. And then they had existing tenants in the building with Figure Plant and Spartec Industries. In 2012, due to market conditions, PDC decided to make improvements to the buildings rather than demolish the buildings, which would create a vacant space and would have dislocated these businesses. So with the expansion, with the improvements, Figure Plant was able to increase their jobs from 5 to 15, and Spartec was able to maintain their medium to high wage jobs of about approximately 40 employees. Also, with the expansion, PDC was able to add an additional tenant with Salvage Works, who sells a vintage salvage lumber and sells furniture. With their expansion to this space, they were able to increase their jobs from 8 to 12 employees. And so in 2015, PDC also collaborated with TriMet and created a community focus group to come up with some development scenarios and have a phasing plan of development. The phasing plan came with, obviously, TriMet would go first on their development because it's a vacant lot, and then would follow, Spartec would be the 4th phase with approximately 8 to 12 years out, depending on what we'd reassess the market conditions at that time. So with this, we also, you'll see the parking lot there, we also had to remove some contaminated soil, and with the community focus group, we were able to include up to 6 spaces for food carts. So these were normally would have been just a parking space. So they are now space for up to 6 carts. I'm happy to say that we will be dedicating the plaza, the Nelson Plaza, after the Nelson family. We have 3 carts that are on site at this time, and so please go down and check them out. They have a very diverse array of food, and like I said, we'll be having a dedication at the end of this month. Also, in addition to the development scenarios and the food cart, we have been helping with business and property investments in the area. Specifically, we've helped caissons find meats with technical assistance to help increase their business competitiveness. We're working with Post Shines, which is a more minority nonprofit organization, so to help them to expand their space, which will help them increase the number of kids that they serve through their Teach Me to Fish program. This helps provide at-risk youth with job skills and life skills. And then we're also assisting Triple Crown Market, which is a African-American owned market, with their improving their storefront and also upgrading their HVAC system, which helped them to reduce their utility costs, and hopefully once the improvements to the storefront are done, hopefully increase their customer base. So that was kind of quick, but I'm going to hand it over to Steve, who will go over more details about the amendment, and then if you have questions at the end, we'll take those.
Thank you, Sue. Good afternoon, Chair Kelly, Commissioners, Executive Director Branham. My name is Steve Blank. I work in the Real Estate Services section of the Investment and Development Department at PDC. We're here today to talk about a lease amendment. I'm sure Commissioner Edlin gets very excited about these types of transactions. The first slide here is a summary of the action. We're asking for authorization for the execution of a lease amendment with Spartec Industries for the PDC-owned property located at 2221 North Argyle Street within the Interstate Corridor Urban Renewal Area And the resolution number we're asking you to approve is number 7213. About the building, as Sue mentioned, this was one of 4 properties that PDC acquired back in July of 2011. At that time, this building was occupied by Spartec Industries. It's a single-tenant user building. It's 35,000 square feet. It has 30,000 square feet of warehouse area and 5,000 square feet of office area. It's a wood-framed and metal building, and it was constructed in 1973. I think it would be classified as probably a Class C type building, warehouse building, industrial building. Spartec lease was commenced in 2005. What they do is they provide engineering and fabrication of high-quality machinery for industries including plywood, laminated veneer, lumber, and rubber products. Their current workforce are 40 people. Let's go ahead to the next slide. We, staff from PDC, have met with Spartec, the principals, to try to negotiate a renewal of their lease, which expires at the end of November 2016. We were assigned the lease when we purchased the property in 2011. It is an absolute triple net lease wherein PDC has no expense at all in the operation of the property, building or land. Everything is the responsibility of the tenant. Spartec originally requested that we extend the lease for up to 10 years. We were not able to facilitate that due to the future redevelopment plans for the area. We agreed at 7 years as an incentive to have them stay there and not incur a vacancy on the property and all the costs that are incurred with a vacant property and not being able to offer a long-term lease. We negotiated a $100,000 lease renewal incentive, which would be applied as a $5,000 monthly rent credit against their base rent. Their base rent is $10,400 a month currently. In addition, they had asked for a tenant improvement allowance, and we negotiated a reimbursable allowance whereby we will lend $50,000 in the form of a loan that will be repaid over the term of the lease at 8% interest to PDC. Both the renewal incentive and the TI reimbursement will be used by Spartec to relocate 2 large fabrication machines that they currently lease from PDC in the building across the street where Salvage Works and Figure Plant are. That will allow for the expansion of Figure Plant to take the remainder of that building. And they will be out of that space by the end of January. So it's kind of a double win for us in that we have another tenant being able to expand more and bring on more workforce, and then to relocate Spartec into one building. They also are anticipating bringing on additional staff due to the funds that they will have available. They're, as I said, they employ 40, and they have told us that there's a possibility that their workforce could go up to 60 people with the use of this. And they're looking at modernizing and their operations, and the building has very, very bland finishes inside. It's probably the same finishes from when the building was built. So if you go inside, it's very, very outdated. Hopefully they can bring it up to a better finish and attract workforce that's interested in working in that type of building. The lease income to PDC over the 7 years is forecasted at $847,148. That is net to PDC with no expenses. And that is really the gist of the negotiations that we've had with them. We're asking for your approval to authorize this lease amendment and approve Resolution 7213. And I am happy to answer questions, and I'm sure Sue is happy to answer questions on her presentation too. Thank you for your time.
Questions?
Two. One, under a net, assuming it's a net lease, as you stated, I assume the tenant is buying the insurance,
The tenant,
procuring the insurance for the building? Fire,
tenant
et cetera.
currently, yes, does have casualty and property or liability insurance.
Reading the write-up, it looks like our total investment, I assume, in the larger property, everything around there is $5,807,000, is that correct?
The entire assemblage of properties we paid, excuse me,
Write-up talks about.
yeah, it was, actually, we purchased all 4 properties at a total price of $3,657,000 in 2011.
And there's another $1,650,000 and another $500,000, it looks like.
We have invested the building that houses Figure Plant and Salvage Works. The original plan, when we acquired it, was for the demolition and the building of a mixed-use project. However, the market conditions at that time, as Sue has talked about, didn't allow for it. So we, as a city agency, have a responsibility to maintain our buildings in a good condition, and that money was spent towards fire, life, safety, code improvements.
5.8 million is an accurate number.
Correct.
roughly. What will our total net operating income be off of the assemblage of the properties after this lease is renewed?
The only income-producing property, other than the Spartak building, is the Nelson Industrial Building, where we have figure plant and salvage works. And I will be coming back to commission, hopefully here soon, with a proposal for figure plants expansion, and then I will have a better grasp on the combination. The food carts, we're offering a very, very nominal rate as part of trying to activate that area and as a community benefit and an amenity. So I think they only need to sell 1 or 2 entrees a day to pay the rent that we're asking for.
One of the comments I made in the staffing is as we go into financial sustainability and, trying to figure out PDC's way forward, I'd really like to see when we bring these to the commission, what the net operating income is on the whole thing, what we've got invested, so that we as a commission and you as staff are making conscious decisions about what kind of rates of return we are getting off of each asset, and make that conscious decision about how much are we doing as mission, how much are we doing as economic, and how does that fit in with the long-term economic sustainability of the agency itself. Other than that, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well said, Commissioner. Any questions?
Ditto,
Yeah.
in terms of getting the,
Okay. In that case, the chair would accept the motion. I have a motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you both.
Thank you.
So our next agenda item is it's the action item directing the some number 1654, report number 1654, resolution 7214, action item directing staff to create a community development entity. You're on.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Justin Douglas. I am joined by Allison Schweiger. We're happy to present this to you today. I just wanted to note that sitting up here and presenting in front of you all, even for those of us who have done this many times, it still can be a nerve-wracking experience. Even if we may look calm, there's a lot of stress going on the inside. And I mention this because Allison has been here for 9 years, and she has somehow managed to never present in front of the board, which is an incredible skill to avoid this. So this is her first time, so we are both going to be nervous throughout this, so just wanted to acknowledge that in advance.
or is that your asked?
We're going to give you a little space, but we're going to give her a lot of space, but you get none.
I don't deserve it, particularly for just embarrassing her like that. Okay, thank you again. We are here to request the board approve Resolution 7214, which would direct staff to create a community development entity. And this is basically the first step in the process for PDC to be eligible to apply for and receive and then direct new market tax credits towards projects in priority Portland neighborhoods. So the structure of our presentation today is I'm just going to talk briefly about the new market tax credit program and then talk about what a CDE is and its role in this initiative. And then at a high level talk about what eligible projects are. There have been a number of projects in Portland that have received new market tax credits. You'll see some photos throughout this one. Even though it's behind the text there is the Union Gospel Mission. There'll be some other slides that show the flavor of projects that have been invested in the past. And then I'll turn it over to Allison. She's done a lot of research on what other city organizations like PDC, redevelopment agencies, economic development agencies, what they have done related to community development entities across the country and how that has helped inform our thinking about this. We've also done some mapping of what the eligible neighborhoods would be for new market tax credits, so she'll share that with you. And then I'll close by talking about what we feel is the strong connection to our strategic plan and what the next steps are in this process. The New Markets Tax Credit Program was authorized in the year 2000, so it's been around for now 16 years. And the intention of the program always has been to attract private investment by allowing institutional investors to receive a credit against their federal income taxes by making investments in what are called community development entities. So basically, the way that it works is that for every dollar that an investor, and these are typically banks, make into CDEs, they get roughly a 39% federal tax credit, and that's guaranteed over a 7-year period. The CDEs, in turn, then use the investments to make loans in or investments in businesses in low-income communities. And that is somewhat of a term of art for the New Market Tax Credits program, and we'll touch on that later. You'll note here there's been significant awards since the program was authorized in 2000, so $43.5 billion has been allocated. In the most recent round, in 2014, there were $3.5 billion allocated by the federal government. I will say, however, though, this is a very competitive program, and we've done some research that shows that for just about every dollar of request for allocation, there's probably, for every dollar that is awarded from the U.S. Department of Treasury, there's $8 or $9 or $10 in need from CDEs that are applying for it. So I don't think it's by no means a slam dunk that if we were to create a CDE and apply for new market tax credits that we would receive them, because it's a competitive field, but we also think that we're in a strong position to compete. So what is a CDE? Well, PDC cannot apply to receive new market tax credits because we're neither a domestic corporation nor a partnership. So in order to create a CDE, we would need to create the legal entity that would be the vehicle to apply for new market tax credits. Another requirement is that the CDE has a primary mission of serving low-income communities and low-income persons. The way that a CDE maintains accountability to the communities that it's serving is through its governance structure. So a CDE can have either a governing body or a governing body and an advisory body, and there are requirements on the people who serve on those bodies and to ensure that they are representing low-income communities. The certification itself is a rolling process, so if the board were to approve this action today, we would act immediately to apply. It's something that's authorized throughout the year, but the tax credits themselves are on a more structured schedule, and I'll get to that later. So I alluded to what some of the projects are. You can see from this list that the types of projects that are typically eligible for new market tax credit allocations are ones that involve the acquisition, rehabilitation, or construction of real estate, or the expansion of existing operating businesses in low-income communities. And they typically are what you see on the screen here. They're projects that create jobs, keep jobs, that offer community facilities. Sometimes they're mixed-use projects. If they are mixed-use projects, they tend to be more focused on the commercial than the residential side. So I'll turn it over to Allison, and she can tell you a little bit about what research she's done into what other organizations are doing and how that's helped inform our work.
So it's been a while since PDC has been in the new markets game, so we decided to take a scan nationally, as you can see. What we found is that it's much more common than we had anticipated finding for city government agencies to create CDEs. We identified at least 20 larger municipalities that have created their own CDEs. And the CDEs listed up here, they're also controlled by those cities or their affiliated economic development organizations, and they've successfully won at least one allocation. Some of them have won many allocations over the years, St. Louis being a great example of that. And as Justin noted, it is a highly competitive process. Even the Portland Family of Funds didn't win an allocation in their first round. We feel confident, though, that we have a solid track record through PDC and a compelling pipeline of projects for when we apply for the allocation. We also don't believe that we'd be competing with CDEs in Oregon. I know that question has come up. Craft 3, which is actually based in Washington, they've not applied for an allocation in a number of years. And United Fund Advisors, as you know, they've not been very focused on the Portland market. EcoTrust has a CDE, as you know, and they've been very successful, but they operate primarily in the rural markets. We did speak with EcoTrust earlier this week, and they were very supportive of this plan, and we discussed potentially partnering on projects in the future. There are currently no other city-sponsored CDEs in Oregon. So we also found that CDEs run the gamut structurally, but we are proposing a closely held nonprofit entity such as a public benefit corporation. This type of entity with the PDC board sitting as the CDE governing board would allow for maximum transparency, and it will be subject to public records and public meetings laws. Our goal is to keep the money local, and we'd like to focus on projects consistent with PDC's strategic plan. So this is a departure, you'll note, from the type of entity that PDC helped create back in 2002, the Portland Family of Funds, which became United Fund Advisors, which was structured with a separate board and ultimately operated as a completely separate entity from PDC. So as Justin pointed out earlier, we must meet that accountability test, meaning that at least 20% of the governing or advisory board is representative of low-income communities in Portland. We are recommending that as close to 100% as possible of the advisory board consist of low-income community representatives. And one of their main roles would be to vet the projects in the pipeline and make recommendations on which projects are funding priorities. So board members, how do they meet the accountability test? They meet it by most commonly by living in low-income communities or by otherwise representing interests of those residents, and that could mean that they're small business owners in those areas. They could be employees or board members of organizations that principally serve those areas as well. And we've already begun the process of soliciting interest from our Neighborhood Economic Development Leadership Group and the Central City Budget Advisory Committee for those positions. So where are our low-income communities? Here they are. So the program is based on census tracts with qualifying tracts reflecting a poverty rate of at least 20%. Typically projects are placed in 30% or higher areas, or medium incomes below 80% of the area median incomes. So this map up here illustrates the qualifying tracts in Portland, and we also showed the overlay of our urban renewal areas and the Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative areas in purple. It's a little bit hard to see.
We feel like this is a compelling visual because one of the things that the connections to our strategic goals is that in places like Gateway and Lents, which are entirely within New Market Tax Credit eligible census tracts, if we are able to get an allocation of new market tax credits, it'll allow PDC to provide much greater certainty and leverage our TIF investments in a way that we haven't before within existing urban renewal areas. And it's just as important for what it can leverage outside of urban renewal areas, either outside of urban renewal areas or even within our Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative districts, which, as you know, have very small increments of tax, of TIF generation. So the ability to identify capital that would focus on these projects, particularly in places like East Portland, we feel like it would be an incredibly valuable tool to us. And as Allison mentioned before, this proposal would really have, the CDE would be focused solely on the Portland market. There's nobody else in doing that right now, and we feel like there's a role to play. And as Chair Kelly and Commissioner Edlin know from having participated on the Financial Sustainability Committee, and you all heard the 50% draft that was presented, creating a CDE was one of the action items that the Financial Sustainability Committee recommended that PDC pursue. So we feel like this is in line both with our strategic plan goals and then also with our long-term business plan and financial sustainability goals. As far as next steps, I alluded to this in the past, but again, if you were to authorize the creating the CDE, we would get right on it and submit an application to become a CDE within the next month or two. What that would do is it would position PDC through the community development entity to be eligible to apply for the award. So the U.S. Department of Treasury, we expect them to announce the next round of new market tax credit awards in early 2017. There's typically about a 3-month application process. But there's those, as we mentioned before, those applications are very competitive. So we would get started on that even before the new year, and hopefully receive notice of an allocation in the fall or winter of 2017. So that is our intention, and we would be happy to answer any questions.
So,
I have
one question.
It's really more for my fellow commissioner. I'm not a lawyer. One of the concerns that I have is, does that put us as board members in a fiduciary role? And does that create additional liability for us as individuals? And I fully encourage moving forward with this. I'm really excited about it. When you get that first award, I'd like to see us thinking about direct investment as opposed to brokering them out to others, because the leverage can be incredible. But I do think as board members, you owe us what kind of liability, if any, it puts on us in a fiduciary role.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a really good point.
Can you speak to that? Because we did look into that, Commissioner.
Yeah, I understand we were going to get a big raise for doing this, yeah. At 20% of nothing.
Bob Betcone, Assistant General Counsel. Thank you, Commissioner Edlin, for the question. The board will function on behalf of the CDE, so somewhat similar to the LLC that we created recently. The board will have a unique role there. It will have a fiduciary duty, but unlike what you may be familiar with in the case of multiple members of an LLC, this board won't have a duty to another member or another shareholder, if you will, in the case of a corporation. So its duty is primarily to itself. Now, in terms of liability and liability protection, we will ensure either that PDC's insurance is covering the board in its capacity as the sole and controlling member of the CDE, or, as we have done in the case of the newly formed LLC, will buy independent insurance to make sure that there's independent coverage for any actions that are taken on behalf of the CDE.
Strike me the main risk, and again, I'm not an attorney, but the main risk would be if one of the deals gets voided by the IRS and is unwound, and the investor at that point in time is going to be looking for somebody to latch onto with big teeth.
Well, I agree. And in the board report, I think in the risk section, we spoke a bit to this matter. And typically, an investor bank would seek an indemnity, I think, and that's a negotiable instrument. And I think that we would be able to help control potential liability in the way that we form that instrument.
Great, thank you.
Are we insulated to some degree by acting in our official capacity? I mean, I'm not as well versed in my municipal law as maybe I should be in this role, but isn't there a certain amount of protection that we get just by acting in our official capacity in this role?
Yes, Commissioner Cruz, thank you for the question. And there is a statute that governs that which you're referring to, and it would essentially have the board de facto covered or indemnified by its public body when acting in its public role. So there's a little bit of a question here, though, when you're putting multiple hats on, have you stepped outside of that role? We don't want to have you wonder about that. And so our first action is to make sure that our existing coverage is going to extend to cover you, and we would be bringing up that statute with our existing insurance coverage partners. And then if it doesn't, or if there's any question, then we'll be buying new coverage, just as a better safe than sorry measure, I would say.
Thank you.
Pardon me? So the commissioner is asking, could we defer the vote until we got information about the insurance? You know, I guess my comment would be we could put that as part of our motion approving it, that we have satisfactory information. First of all, for those of you who don't know, I spent the last 15 years serving on advisory committees for new market tax credits with the Portland Family of Funds, and my thought on this is that we should have done this a long time ago. That the tool is a tremendous one, and I'm anxious to get it moving. We did things like the Community Transition School out on Killingsworth. So there may be projects that we can use this kind of funding for that could help with the homeless issue that we were just hearing about. There's all kinds of opportunities. So could we put an amendment on our approval, or what would be the way to do that?
Chair Kelly, you certainly could put an amendment of any sort that you desired. I would offer you up one other alternative, though, which might be to make so that we can move forward with our plans, but also not leave any commissioners concerned about this issue. You could make the approval condition and allow staff to move forward with the creation of the entity, but to make conditional any acts of the entity conditional upon the board's satisfactory review of, we would call it liability management measures, which is basically going to mean insurance.
Does that work for you?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, so the chair would accept a motion with a condition on to that effect.
All right, so moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, the ayes have it, and Allison, you did quite well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Need a parking. Oh, I'm sorry. The PDC commission is now adjourned. I need a parking. Thank you. Somebody's got to manage these words.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they're a beast. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, I got to keep mine too.
Yeah.
How nice to meet you.
Everybody's hand. Good to see
Yeah.
you
Oh,
today.
hey, nice to see you too. Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Nice to meet you again. Yeah. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. How long do you think Helfrich has?
Have an opportunity to kind of push the agenda. I'm enormous. Thank you. Thank you. Rock star. I'm like,
Okay.
good to see you. Good to see you as well. Welcome aboard. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excited to work with you.